Just a moment. I'm amazed to have some real community activists, community engagement people around me. That's the thing that I become such a fan about. So in front of me, I have Teresa Stewart from I Hope. Just say hello real quick to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
And then I have Mr. Clyde Lloyd of One Small Change, among many other things. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here.
Amen. All right. So listen, we're going to go to break, and we come right back with more Dynamics of Dialogue. We'll get into our announcements and have some great conversation. Just one moment.
I can't see you from here. The matter of us lies in the atmosphere, 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 atmosphere.
I can feel you from there, though the signals you send touch everywhere, 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 everywhere.
I would call to you beneath the distance that we made too soon.
And you would say my name as if things were the same. I want you to.
And we drew maps so we could follow our tracks and feel brand new. Feel brand new. Feel brand new. 'Cause I wrote my love into your life. 'Cause I wrote my love into your life. Your life. 'Cause I wrote my love into your life. 'Cause I wrote my love into your life. Your life. I can't see you from here. The matter of us lies in the atmosphere, 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 atmosphere.
I can feel you from there, though the signals you send touch everywhere, everywhere, everywhere.
I would call to you beneath the distance that we made too soon.
And you would say my name as if things were the same. I want you to.
And we drew maps so we could follow our tracks and feel brand new. Feel brand new. Feel brand new. 'Cause I wrote my love into your life. 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 'Cause I into your life, your life.
You're listening to IBNX. IBNXradio.com.
Welcome back to Dynamics of Dialogue. I was just in the studio here. My two guests have got me cracking up. I cannot. I enjoy their company so much. Let me go ahead and introduce my fellow New Yorkers. Teresa Stewart, just tell us a little bit more about I Hope. What you do with I Hope, darling.
Okay. Well, I Hope is a recovery community organization. We were founded in 2015 after a combination of listening sessions and focus groups in Middle Georgia. So that's the community that we serve. So our purpose there is to bring through advocacy and awareness and education and peer support services. We want to help sustain recovery in our community when people are kind of exiting out, whether it be prisons, jails, treatment centers. We believe recovery is sustained in the community. So we wanted to do something that was new to our area.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. I didn't know. I've talked about recovery so many times, and because I didn't know anything about it, I'd never heard about recovery. You figure, what is that? You know, you think about like alcohol or something like that, but what does it really look like? So when you get to hear stories and see how people can go through things and then be such a powerful force in the community, to me, it's outstanding. Yeah. Clyde Lloyd of One Small Change.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I work with a variety of nonprofits, One Small Change, as she said, both in partners, and sometimes I work with Alexia Jones at Rise Theater. What I do is I facilitate. I'm in and out of Minnesota, North Dakota. Depending on where I'm needed, I go and facilitate cultural competency, and just making people aware of everything we do exists in our culture. When we show up, whether we know it or not. We represent where we grew up, the information that we have, and so that's what I do.
Okay. All right. See, that is an amazing thing to me, like I said, to be able to have an experience and to show up for other people in a way that opens up understanding. And at least for me, I think the fact that it opened up understanding for me means that it'll open up understanding that I can now take and pass on to my son. You know, he'll have, I think these are things that have such a long-lasting effect. Before we get into the show today, I do need to go ahead and make some announcements. First, I want to say Tuesday, May 22nd, please go check out Soul Cafe. One of my guest co-hosts, Ken Warner of Ken Warner Poetry, is hosting Soul Cafe at Savoy Bar and Grill. That's in Highway 138 in Stockbridge. The feature that night is Tony Hightower. Show starts at 8 o'clock. Next, he's also having, on the fourth Sunday of every month, is Poetic Flows at Corshell's at 1140 Mount Zion Boulevard in Morrow, Georgia. And you have, the doors open at 7 o'clock, but you have 3 great features on stage that night: Soul Scribe, Lauren Doriana, and Wanisha Spencer. So that's going to be a dope show as well. Ken Warner always puts on some really amazing shows, and he's a great host. So I'm going to encourage you guys to go check those out. Next, my other guest co-host, Harold Outley of Words Spoken by Mr. Outley, is hosting Free Your Mind Fridays on the 3rd Friday of every month. Excuse me. And this event is being held at Cigar Country Club Lounge at 301 Lemon Street Northeast in Marietta. Costs $10 to get in, and it's a really nice spot. There was some, I went for the first time to that place, and it was pretty nice, very nice feel, very nice atmosphere, and it was very welcoming as well. So I hit the stage just real briefly, and so I'll probably be back again next month. I believe the next date is June 15th. Last I have for you an announcement from Gwinnett County Police Department. This is their 3rd annual Youth Police Academy coming up. And I'd like to encourage people to have your young people go out. This is for middle schoolers and high school students that live in Gwinnett County, and it's designed to educate them about the police department and how they enforce laws. And the reason why I do this is because I think when a lot of us have the conversation with our young people about law enforcement, it is one from a defensive stance, a stance of fear, a stance of this is what you do if. And I think that is, well, my humble opinion is that it is almost like passing on the black tax. We need to pass the message on. I think it is useful to talk about interactions, but we can talk about them in a way that's empowering. So I think if we empower our young people with information about their rights, about what they can and cannot do, what the law enforcement officers are allowed to do, then I think that's very helpful for them to have a relationship of understanding. So it's a 1 week long session. It goes from Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. There's a June event and a July event. So listen, for more information, if you'd like to find out, reach out to Officer Carlos Huggins at 678-226-7752 or send an email to youthpoliceacademy@gwinnettcounty.com. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to be back in with some really good discussion. We're going to hear some great stories and get it started.
When you call my name, when you love me gently, call my name, when you love me gently, when you call my name, when you love me gently, why, when you call my name. When you love me got you in the flow, yeah, I got you, got you, got you now.
You're listening to IBNX. IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music. Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z.
Hey, I'm Mariah Carey.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P., man. It is. It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce.
This is Nicki Minaj, and I'm in the mix with
IBNX Radio. Life comes at us fast. One thing that gives us comfort is knowing that someone is there when you need them. Well, at Pleasant Hills Insurance, that's our promise to our clients. Call 770-910-7460 today or visit our website at pleasanthillsinsurance.com for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Many of the large agencies have turned their back on the retired workforce. At Pleasant Hills Insurance, if others can't qualify you, very often we can. Pleasant Hills Insurance proudly provides options for preconditions. So call 770-910-7460 or visit pleasanthillsinsurance.com today for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Pleasant Hills Insurance, we're here when you need us.
What's up, y'all? This is Most High, and you're listening to Dynamics of Dialogue on IBNX Radio Network. You're dynamic, your dialogue.
Hey, this is Rebel Queen, and welcome back to Dynamics of Dialogue. As I said, we were going to come back with some great stories, some great conversation, and I'm going to go ahead and ask. I introduced to you a minute ago Clyde Lloyd, just an amazing brother to me. He's, sometimes you meet people and they have all of these gems that they just carry, and you just never know until you listen. And they open up their mouths, and all of a sudden you hear all of these gems fall out. And so that's one of the reasons why I asked Clyde to come in the studio today to share his story. Clyde, would you?
Sure. Well, I grew up in New York. It's a funny thing, we take being from New York very seriously, and
yeah, we do.
We take a lot of pride in that. And when my mother told me that I wasn't actually born in New York, I was heartbroken. I came to New York when I was less than a week old. I was born in South Carolina, so I didn't realize that I wasn't born in New York. But so we get to New York, and my parents eventually start to use various substances, mostly alcohol, but other substances as well. And my mom was a nurse, and she was one of those functional alcoholics and addicts where she never missed a day's work, but the time she got off, she was into whatever it is that she was doing. And my dad was the same way. And it's funny how men, especially when they get intoxicated, for some reason they think they can fight. And he used to want to jump on my mom all the time. And my mom turned out to be a very dangerous lady. So he quickly learned that that wasn't the answer. But so there was a lot of chaos, a lot of fighting. And I learned at an early age a bunch of particular skills that a kid at that age should not have to learn. I used to come in the house, and I used to have to check to see where they were in their drinking. In the beginning of their drinking, they were happy. So I knew that I could get yes. Whatever, if I needed a yes or any question, I knew to catch them when they first started drinking, and it was a yes. But towards the middle and towards the end, it got kind of dangerous, especially for a kid and especially for me, because I used to have to try to find my way from the hallway to the stairs, which were across the room upstairs where my brothers and sisters were.
So you had to, I'm sorry, so to ask us, you had to navigate your way through their mood.
Yes.
Just by observing them coming into the room.
Yes.
And you'd have to navigate your way around that. So you didn't know it's chaotic for you because you don't know what you're gonna come home to.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's strangers in the house. You know, people
Yeah.
tend to pick people up at bars, and you know they become friends because you know they got something that they connected with, and that's alcohol. So you're strangers in the house. So I come there and I peek in there and I see, you know, that either they're arguing or they're happy, dancing, and I make my way upstairs. Sometimes I got caught, and when I got caught, I knew that I was in, you know, trouble because depending on what kind of mood she was in, I was going to have to deal with something. So, but my goal was to make it upstairs to find out if my sisters and brothers, because I was the oldest, were okay. And so I used to have to do that on a regular basis, and it was kind of dangerous, you know. My mom, I remember one time my mom was sleeping, and I hadn't seen her in a very peaceful state in so long, so I kind of eased over there and I kissed her on the cheek. And when I kissed her, all I remember was flying across the room and hitting the wall and sliding down the wall. She had punched me, thinking that I was one of the men in the house that was trying to kiss her or do something.
That sounds definitely like a post-traumatic type of reaction.
Yeah, it was very painful.
My gosh.
I still get emotional, and I still feel that because the person that you think is supposed to protect you and love you and nurture you, you know, when she hit me, that hurt. It wasn't the punch. It was just that my mother had hit me. You know what I mean?
And how do you, so let me ask you this, so how do you feel like that affected you overall? I mean, you know, this having to navigate these emotions, which I can relate to, having to navigate that in that type of chaos, not being able to, you know, sort things out. You know, I mean, I don't know how you were supposed to figure out how to be, and then at the end of that, you still get physical. And I guess now you can look and see, you know, put that in perspective. But as a child, that's devastating. So how, you know, how did that affect you in your story?
Well, you know, being a child, not knowing how to really deal with all those emotions, it came out in my behavior. You know, I started acting up, started acting out. I hung out with the bad kids. You know, I did bad things. You know, I showed up in my everyday life and how I treated people that were around me. So it didn't show up in a very pleasant way, but it showed up in a very negative way. And because I had nobody there to say, hey, you know, this is what you need to do. You know, we need to sit down. We need to talk about it. This is what I have planned for you. You know, you're going to do this. You're going to graduate. You're going to go to college. No. The funny thing about children is that we're going to choose a role model.
Yes,
it's just who are you going to choose?
The one that's listening.
We're going to connect to somebody.
You're going to connect to the one that's listening to you.
We're going to connect to somebody.
That's right.
So I connected with the guys in the street because they actually showed me some love and they listened to me and they said, we understand. And they turned out not to be the best guys in the world, but at least they listened and they understood. So I started doing a lot of negative things.
Yeah. You know, so, and that took you down the path. I'm sure that was, you know, difficult
Very
to say
difficult.
that, you know, I don't even know how to characterize those things because it's only, you know, I've shared before that I've struggled with that within my family and with my mom. But the language that I used before I understood that this was an illness is different. And I'm not even sure what language to use now.
Yeah.
So, you know, how do you know, how do you navigate that? Like how do you navigate, you know, the experience that you had Starting from, I mean, where do you want to start? Where do you want to start next?
Well, you know, now, you know, my mom is in recovery and has been since 1976. So my mom is like my biggest advocate. Now, she has 41 years of information. My dad has 35 years in recovery. So there's a lot of recovery in my family now. But I had to go back to that household. I had to revisit that household, and we had to lie a lot of those things to rest because I didn't know that that trauma caused a lot of feelings. Those feelings caused a lot of behaviors, and those behaviors showed up in a lot of different ways, through substances, through acting out, through prison system, through jails. See, and most of the time, people were trying to tell me, you know, from the outside of those circles, is stop doing this, stop doing that, act right, you know, which I would do at times, but it would always come back because I never dealt with the trauma part of it, because the trauma part of it involved going back into that house. And the reason why we don't deal with it because it's so well guarded. Because in the black community, we're told that what happens in this house stays in this house. So I'm already in code of silence, and I'm carrying this stuff around for me, but this stuff is causing me to do a lot of crazy things in life. So eventually, I found out that the very things that I was guarding, the thing about putting up a wall, nothing gets in, nothing gets out. You know, so I was stuck behind the wall with the filth and wouldn't let anything in. So eventually I come to realize that those things that I were protecting are the very things that were hurting me, and I had to make peace with that.
What a profound revelation. What a profound place to come to. So, I mean, how did you, when you came to that realization that you know, this is what was holding you back, the way you coped with your pain is the very thing that was holding you back, what brought you from that place to where you are now with the work that you do now?
I think it was just my time. You know, I had created some space to let some things in. My cup definitely wasn't full. It was pretty empty, so I was open to a lot of information. And I started taking some trainings. I almost backed out of the first training thinking, you know, low self-esteem, that I'm older now, I couldn't remember stuff, I'm not gonna be able to pass no tests, I haven't been to school in so long. So I almost talked myself out of it until the person told me, stop with the excuses and go ahead and take the class. So I did, and now I have like 15 certifications. But what it helped me do is take in a lot of additional information and realize that a lot of the information that I have is incorrect information, which starts the cycle. For instance, men don't cry. Is that true? Drink like a man. So if I don't drink like you, I'm not a man. So I realized that I was full of a lot of false information.
From the cycle of conditioning, yeah.
Yes.
The cycle.
I was at that point where I was willing to listen to somebody else. You know?
Wow. So, you know, I took so much from your story, from what you just said. You know, there's things that I can identify with from my family perspective. So I don't want to try to speak for other people, but again, you know, experiencing addiction through the lens of a family member, right. What I've come to learn about those who have gone through it in my family, they didn't feel heard. There's a traumatic event that there's a commonality right. in these things, the coping skills not being supported. Just recently, have either one of you heard of this documentary called Crazy Wise?
Yes, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it.
It's really interesting.
I have not heard of it. Crazy Wives?
Crazy Wise, okay. Like WISE.
Oh, okay.
And it talks about how the idea of mental illness and these things that we experience, and all are rooted in not being connected to people. Mm-hmm. Addiction problems, it's a lack of connection. Mm-hmm. to another human being. So in other societies, they don't necessarily believe that it's a illness. They believe it's an awakening. Like a person has this crack, an experience in life that brings them to this place where they have this awakening. And in some cultures, they're healers and shamans. And it is really, and they walk through the journey of two different individuals that went on this path. And it is really an amazing thing. But, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, in addiction, we disconnect. You know, we
Exactly.
disconnect from everyone around us, society. So the opposite of disconnecting is connecting.
It's connecting.
And they did a thing where they had some mice that were by themselves, and they put water in one bottle and some opiate stuff in another one, and they would go into the opiate bottle until they put them in community, the same mice. And he would go there periodically, but he chose community over going to that bottle, and eventually stopped going to that bottle and started going into the community with the other mice and the wheels and all of that, and passed and decided not to use that bottle. So yes, it is connecting.
It is.
It is being a part of this healing.
So,
I was just going to add, that is one of my memorable and favorite quotes, is the opposite of sobriety is not addiction. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but the opposite of addiction is connection. Because the only thing that we were connected to was the dope. But the when you look at that and you pull that apart, it's still about connection.
Absolutely.
It's still about connection. And so
Go ahead.
even sometimes that's how we enter into our places of healing, very disconnected. And so being able to come from a lived experience perspective help to make that more understandable to the family member, to the community, to legislation, to all those other places.
And that makes sense. It makes a whole lot of sense. So I wanted to ask you, does any of that resonate with you? I know we haven't gone into your story yet, but I just want to ask, because that struck me. And because, again, and I think I always, sometimes I get too deep. So before I do that, I think that there's always ways that we can relate, So I know I identify as a person living with a mental health diagnosis. So when I look at the places where your story and my story intersects is the trauma. And the effect that it had on us,
right.
And how it played out. I think it plays out differently, clearly, in people's lives. But then the areas where the root of whatever it is that we're suffering from, all of these areas, like I just talked about, not being heard, trauma, do any of those things resonate with you?
Absolutely, especially the not being heard, because then that goes back to the connection. It's not so much that I'm not speaking.
Right.
A lot of times it's just that I'm not being heard, or some of the things that I'm saying is, children are seen and not heard type of aspect. But that just goes back to that disconnect, needing to be not even just heard, but also be believed that where you're at in a certain position. So that's why I think stories are so valuable. One of the newest things that I have through one of my trainings was grasped onto is intentionally not knowing. Listening to somebody, intentionally not knowing, still not over-identifying, even with my peer. Because even as me and Clyde sit here, I still want to listen to his story like I've never heard it. And and so to me, that really helped me on the spiritual aspect, because when I think about God, I'm like, well, man, is that how he listens to me? Do he listen to me intentionally not knowing, even though you know everything about me, I still get to tell my story. So, right, being heard is really healing, is very therapeutic, and being believed, and not fixed. Because a lot of times people don't want a response. They just need to be heard. For a long time, they weren't heard.
Listening is a tool, We think we listen, but most of the time we're in debate. We're not in dialogue.
That's right.
We're already preparing for our comeback before the person even finishes. And it's very healing to not let my experience interfere with me experiencing your experience.
Yes. This is why, I let y'all talk because that's number one. And number two, I fully believe, I've heard both of you deliver your stories in different ways. And as I hear you talk, as I heard you talk a minute ago, I heard you go some places I hadn't heard you go before, share some of those different things. And that's why I wanted you to I wanted to flesh that out a little bit, because, what makes you jewels and gems to this society is your heart, that you've overcome these challenges and that you're willing to share with other people.
Thank you.
I can't say that enough. I really can't, because to me, like I said, it means a lot. And think about how much we go through in our communities. But all of this is still a great, great opportunity. And I think we're going to talk about some stuff after the show, too. So, Clyde, when you left off, you were talking about that experience you had with your mom, right? And how that you tried to kiss her, and just such a restful state, restful place. And it was met with that type of response. You talked about her being in recovery. Have you all talked about gone back and revisited any of those things that happened in that part of life?
Yes, we had to. She didn't even know that I was feeling that way, and we got to talking one day, and I started telling her about that, and tears started coming out of my eyes. And she said, wow, I had no idea that was still affecting you. We'd like to think that some of the things that we went through as children don't affect us now as adults. But I remember one day I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I'm trying to lose weight, but I just can't seem to lose weight. She says, oh, I know why. And I said, Mom, how do you know why? She said, I'm going to tell you why. She said, when you were young, it was mandatory in our house that you ate everything off your plate.
Amen.
She said, I bet you're still doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought about it. When I'm at restaurants, anywhere, I eat everything on my plate. She said, son, you don't have to do that anymore. You're an adult. And so now I don't eat everything on my plate. If I get full, I stop.
Right.
And I do a takeaway. But that's just something simple that I was still doing that I learned as a child. So we do bring things from our childhood.
That's what, and I really want to take this moment before we go into the next part of the next break here. I really want to take this moment to talk about, we stay talking about generational curses. And I just, I'm not beating anybody up, but I think that it's very practical. Right, the Bible says that faith without works is dead, and I'm just speaking to the people that believe this, that are Bible-believing people. The Bible says that faith without works is dead, so that means you can pray, but there has to be action that goes along with that, right? Because that's where the works part comes in, and it's the same type of thing. You have to know that it's not an instant switch. Right. You have to know that you have to put some work and effort into it. Just need people to know that. You really have to. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to break. We come back with more dynamic dialogue. I'm your host, Rebel Queen, and we are back in the studio with Hi, Lauren and Teresa Stewart. We're talking having some great conversation about their stories about substance abuse and recovery, and actually there is a beyond as well. So just when we went off to break, I was just asking Teresa a question, kind of really stunned myself. Listen, we heard Clyde's story, at least parts of it. I know that's parts of it. And I extracted some things out of there that really resonated with me, and Teresa was sharing what parts of those things resonated with her as well. And we're going to get into your story too.
All right. Well, you ready for that?
Yeah, sure, yes.
Okay. Well, kind of like with you guys, I just need to first and foremost say that I am so honored to be with native New Yorkers. Yay! So I also was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and I've been down here for quite some time. I made the transition mentally, but we still claim our first place. Let me say this, I like the title that you gave this, Substance Abuse Recovery and Beyond, because that so fit that very well, because that is where it started, with substance abuse, with almost like the way Clyde talked about, with a little bit of difference is my trauma really came from a place of really not being heard. It really did. For a long time, I didn't want to tell my story because even though there was some typical things going in the household, I was the first person in my family who became a drug addict, who became really, really strung out. I don't want the listeners to dress that up because it's really important when I talk about my recovery and what that has done for me as well, to know that people can come back from a very dark, difficult place.
Yes.
We really do. And so my trauma, for me, the way I looked at it was, again, not having that voice, but having that comprehension. I don't know if that makes sense. As a young child, I was able to really just comprehend things, I guess, just beyond my age a little bit, and I paid attention to things that, adults was doing. I knew that we were getting food stamps on the 1st and 15th. I knew that everybody gathered around the mailbox and everybody was happy in the community at that time. I grew up in an environment that was actually very loving and nurturing early on in my life. Grandma's house.
All right, yeah.
Grandma's house, and Grandma's house I was a baby. I was a baby for a long time. I have a sister, but she's 15 years younger than me, and again, just having that level of comprehension and insight and not having a platform because children are seen and not heard to have these conversations, it kind of, what I did wasn't accepted in the projects in New York, in Fort Greene projects, right? So when you were the smart kid, you wasn't the cool kid. So I had to make some choices.
Whether you're going to be smart or the cool kid.
Smart or cool, right? Because I love certain things. I love going to school. I love going to summer school, not because I failed the grade, but because I was attractive to learning. Learning and getting information was always attractive to me very on. Now let me back up and say that there was some really difficult things to deal with in my household. There was incest, there was molestations, and they were indirect. And it wasn't until I got in my recovery process I realized that they were direct too. And I was directly affected by the mood and the things that was going on in the house. See, early on, we ate at the table together. There's so much value in the kitchen table. We sat down as a family. She cooked every night. We came in before the street lights went off. We did all those things. And something happened to turn all that upside down. Right? And it turned upside down immediately, and it turned upside down instantly. And when it did, that's when my trauma started, because I didn't know how to, it was just really, really hard for me to do,
You didn't have a voice for yourself.
I didn't have a voice for myself.
Nobody was listening.
Right. But being able to comprehend something has happened, but nobody is talking. So it wasn't like, I would go and just, get lost in my toys or my siblings. I wanted to know what had happened, right? I wanted somebody to know how valuable the kitchen table was to me. I wanted somebody to know how valuable those dinners and those family gatherings. And when they went away, I didn't know how to express that. So loneliness.
Yes.
Lonely, and I don't mean like just being in a room by yourself. I mean
loneliness, being in a whole room full of people.
A whole room full of people.
Yeah.
A hole in your soul that you can't really explain.
Yeah.
And so when we went outside when I started school, that validation early on, because I said Grandma did a really good job, and with love and attention and affection. And what happened was when I went outside into society, they didn't mimic that. And I couldn't understand that either as well. So those were some of the traumatic emotional experiences that I had early on. She didn't teach me how to, to deal with maybe the bullies. I was bullied.
Because we didn't talk.
Right.
Yeah. See, so this is how, so just to go back to that point that I was making, a lot of these things about things that we would categorize as generational curses that go on in our family, it's really going on because we're not talking about it. We're not giving it any voice. And we're, saying that it doesn't exist and it's a demonization of the black man. Listen, our society is proliferated with stories of men and women who have, been traumatized by all kinds of family violence. And it's connected because we don't talk about it and we don't allow it to heal.
And that other abuse, psychological abuse.
Yeah.
A lot of times we want to, and they all matter and they're equivalent. But even that again, and I think that's the type of abuse that I suffered as a child. As an adult, I can put a word to it a little bit. And I also want to say it wasn't intentional. It goes just back to that cycle.
Right, to the cycle of our way of being. And it's a way that we talk, the way that we talk to our children, the way we think that we're supposed to talk to our children. We think it's supposed to be okay because that's what we did. That's what was done to me. And I'm fine, right? Okay. So how many people have had that conversation with you, right? Oh, that's the way I was did and I'm fine. And you're looking at them like, really? Really?
We have an acronym for fine. I don't know if I can say it here, but there's an acronym.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. This is a weekend show.
The acronym for fine, I have heard that has been really relevant in my life a lot of times was, effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
Yes.
So when somebody say I'm fine, these are the things that I'm saying because, again, conditioned to say those.
That we're conditioned to say those things, right? So let me ask you this then. So you shared a lot of the same feelings, like I said, which is interesting, but that we all kind of had that same thing that resonated with us. So what was the thing that brought you to the place of substance abuse? Was it the coping skills? Because it seems like that was one thing also that I've heard, because we're developing these on the fly.
Right. Absolutely. It was a lack of coping skills, and it was, again, my communication or my register wasn't developed. I like Dr. Ruby Payne. I read her materials because a lot of times you wasn't given the words to speak and to say what was going on, so I didn't have the vocabulary. I've learned to say with a chameleon. I became a chameleon. So I had to act as if to get by. So that was it. Just not having those coping skills led to that substance abuse,
That is so wow. I think that people have to realize that it can happen to anybody, right?
Right.
Because when we talk about substance abuse, I think what we haven't discussed yet is that it is it's a disorder. It's not just somebody wakes up one morning and says, hey, I'm going to start abusing this thing. And, it's a process that you go through. And it has everything to do with the lack of coping skills, right?
Absolutely. And it comes from, no matter what the manifestation can be, because for me it was started off with marijuana and drinking and alcohol, then it progressed to crack cocaine and all these other things, right? It comes from a science perspective a little bit. It can still, that same trauma, even in mental health, that fear, that fight and flight comes from the same limbic system in our
Yeah.
brain. It comes from that same place where we begin to, those things that wire together, find them, and they build these strong bonds or connections. Let's go back to that. Those are the connections that was resonated in my brain early on.
So one of the thing that had me bring you both today onto the show is that you both are doing some amazing work, and I know, you can kind of gloss over it a little bit, and say, oh well, I do this in the community. Oh well, I have this number of certifications and things, but I really am interested in knowing how what you're doing now helps you, with what you've lived through in your past, how you've overcome substance abuse and in recovery. Because I know for me, finding recovery may look different, but for me, finding a thing that I love to do, it does something for me. So, what about?
Well, for me, again, it goes back to being able to fill that void. For me, it was a spiritual void. And I want to say this, when I say spiritual void, I don't mean that it had to come from church. It just meant it was something in my spirit that was lacking.
Yes.
And until I found something to connect spiritually with, then I couldn't enter into a process of recovery, But I think everything that I went on from, I used for 16 years, so it's been 16 years since I've had a drink or a drug, right? So I used for 14 years. And I like to say now my scales is just a little bit, my recovery outweighs my using a little bit now. But I think all that, everything from the moment I decided I wanted to do something different, whether I did it or not, played the part. It started that works thing we talked about a little bit. They put that work and that faith. Just that glimpse of, I don't want to live like this. And so a lot of people outside don't see the manifestation. Change usually go unrecognized to the onlooker because it's internal.
It is. Well, they notice a change in you, but it's, well, why isn't she, she don't want to get high with me no more. She don't want to hang out. She don't want to run the street. She don't want to do this or whatever it is that put them in that position that they really enjoyed you for, is when you're not in that place anymore. Right. And that's where they, what's wrong with you?
Right.
When in reality, there's not anything wrong. You're moving on into a better place. Right. There's lots of us that have ways of dealing with coping things. Clyde?
Well, I think, for me, I don't necessarily, I was an introvert. I don't particularly like people. I prefer to stay away from people. But I realized that in order for me to recover, that I was going to have to come outside. See, inside the box is my comfort zone, but change takes place out here. Why? Because I'm uncomfortable out here. I'm comfortable in here. So I had to step outside of my comfort zone and step into that circle where I was uncomfortable and allow that to be, just to sit in my uncomfortability and be okay. And that's where change took place. So now I do a lot of things. This makes me uncomfortable, what I'm doing right now.
Absolutely.
But I know that I need to do this. This is very important, having these conversations, because somebody out there is hearing this, and it's helping them, and I don't necessarily do this for me. I do this for other people. I got clean for myself first and to help someone else. You often hear them make that analogy where, the person walking by, look down in the hole, somebody's calling them down and say, help me, help me. He's like, well, let me go get some help. The next person, let me go get some rope. And then the next guy comes by, climbs down in the hole. He said, why'd you do that? I'm trying to get out of here. And he said, hey, I've been down here before. I know the way out. So I'm here, I'm climbing down in the hole to help someone out because I've been down here before.
Yeah.
And if they can add to that, willing to sit down there if they're not ready to come out. Will I sit down there with them in the hole?
Yes. And so now think about that. That's actually an excellent segue, because I wanted you both to talk about what does that look like for you right now? So, I know that you find a way of sitting in the hole with them now, and you find a way. Yeah. Last year, I was going to come to your show. I was supposed to come to, I've been to the rehearsals, a couple of them, And I wanted to perform in that show and didn't make it because I was sick as a dog. So I would have met you sooner than that. But with I Hope in the arts. So talk a little bit more about, you talked about arts and a little bit about Rise, but what do you specifically do with I Hope? What does it look like and how does it make you feel?
So what I specifically do with I Hope, if I could sum it up in the simplest form, is what I want to do with I Hope is help liberate other people the way I've been liberated through my recovery process. I want to provide a space and a place that's safe enough for people to have authentic conversations. Because sometimes we can sit down and we can have conversations, but they're not authentic because I don't feel it's safe enough yet, right? And a lot of times, no matter what door I walk through, I'm still going to test to see if it's safe enough for me to tell that authentic story that I could find a me too, right? Because everybody usually have a me too. You know, me too, girl, I did that too, or I felt like that before too. So, and I hope that's what we want to do. I want to help liberate people in rural Georgia specifically, because there's been wonderful things that are going on around recovery, around Georgia, around other states. But I just felt like the information wasn't trickling into those little corners and rural areas where people are waiting to be heard and to connect. And I just want to let them know that, hey, it's something out there for you to connect to that can sustain your recovery.
And so how does that work? I mean, right, you talked a little bit earlier about, like, when I was mentioning to you about my guest co-hosts are both event hosts, and they do poetry shows. And you talk about you. So you're talking about like a cocktails conversation kind of thing. Well, what kind of thing are you talking about? This is something you're offering to the public?
Right. So we specialize in people seeking recovery, people in recovery, allies, and making all kind of community connections. So what we do is we have recovery stations. Since I'm in rural Georgia, I go out to other, like Peach County. Let me talk about Fort Valley. Love and Kindness Ministry is one of our recovery stations. And what we do is we go out there and I do focused conversations. I'll either do trainings on the science of addiction and recovery. We just been fortunate to train the whole police, the city of Fort Valley Police Department, me and another individual on overdose prevention. So we're kind of infiltrating the community and letting them kind of make them recovery attractive.
Well, can I just pause for a second on that? Y'all just taught the Fort Valley Police Department about addiction, overdose prevention.
Overdose prevention.
That's huge.
Well, you know, that didn't just come out of, back in 2000 and, I want to say 13, we started having focus sessions, and the Honorable Mayor Barbara Williams would give up Saturdays for the City Hall. So this is grounds that has been being cultivated over quite some time. Now, right? So that has been, as well as cities like Houston County and Warner Robins, and getting proclamation and just doing things in the community that says recovery.
So so this is the work, right? So earlier, that's the point I keep trying to make. I keep going back to it because a lot of time we expect for change to happen very quickly in our community. But you mentioned this amazing thing that you just did. That was something that it took some years to bring that to fruition.
Absolutely.
Right. It took some effort, some meetings, and engagement with the mayor and all of that.
And great supports and connections. One Small Change is a really big part of I Hope success. The Georgia Council on Substance Abuse. Like I said, just in Middle Georgia, you know, Faces and Voices of Recovery, just tapping into different other national advocacy industries and saying, I want that for my community.
That's right.
I want that for my, I don't want to go there and get it. I want to, how can we develop that from inside out? Because we just talked about that's how change happens.
And who better to deliver that than someone with lived experience? Who better?
From the community.
From the community. You know, because I think within our community, to me, this is what Black Power looks like.
Okay.
Because in our community, we're saying Black Power on one hand, but on the other hand, we're saying, but they won't give us. And when they don't give us, one thing my mama taught me is that one monkey don't stop the show. So when they don't give to us, then we create for ourselves, right? They say necessity is the mother of invention. You know, and these are the needs, and I keep going back to that session, the session that you all both attended, the Sunrise Series. I wish this was something that we could just do in large groups and put it on TV, because that was an amazing experience. But it brings up so many thoughts about exactly what we need for the community. It can come from us, and it should come from us. And you didn't need do you have $1 million?
I don't have $1 million.
She does not have $1 million to do it. So you managed to create that type of change without $1 million.
Absolutely right, and I didn't have it for a long time. But you know, I guess when you're doing something that you're passionate, and not I guess, but when it's intentional, let me say that. And I hope is an acronym. It stands for Intentional Holistic Opportunities to Promote Empowerment.
Oh,
right,
wow.
and so that's our recovery community organization. And when you do things that are intentional, the universe, it opens up for you, you know. So now we were able to get some funding, you know, again, like through the Georgia Council, through the state who's looking at us now. Somebody, you know, the Office of Recovery Transformation, somebody remembered way back in 2013, actually it was Tony Sanchez, right? And said, I remember what they were doing down there, and it was without no funding, but it was in, you know, so it goes back to why do I do it? It is for my community, and it is for myself. So we're able to, now we're going to be able to do peer-to-peer transportation. So we're looking for, you know, like peer specialist transportation coach or peer recovery specialist transportation coaches that not only be able to fill in the gap of, okay, you're a black man or you're a man who don't have Medicaid, right? Because Medicaid expansion didn't have, but you're struggling and you need services. So to be able to get you to and fro, and also do some recovery coaching while we're doing that, and then take them to non-traditional places to build their recovery capital. The library. If you want to go to the library and do research, then we want to be able to take you to the grocery store. You know, so some of the non-traditional places that these other transportation services. And then I mentioned the all family and friend meeting.
Right.
Which is real. I'm passionate about that because, you know, recovery needs. I would like for it to be inclusive to the family and to want to be able to come to the table and say, like you did, oh, okay, it wasn't until I became an adult that I realized that this is something more, somebody didn't just choose this. Would you agree? Right,
I would definitely agree. A lot of times, a lot of the stuff that we get, we inherit, you know. But and sometimes we play a role in it by just our choices. But for the most part, you know, they say, you know, I watched my mom and my dad go through some horrific things, and needless to say, I didn't want to experience that, and I did end up experiencing that as well. But I think, you know, you were talking about the communities. You know, I was talking to a guy from Chick-fil-A. I was at his house, and for some other reason, and he said, you know, we have money put aside for the community, but nobody comes and claims it because the way we see it is healthy community, good business.
Yes.
So we have money set aside
for that purpose.
If people will come to us and let us know what they would like to do, we can fund it.
And you know, that's true. Actually, I was volunteering for a food pantry at one point. And I went to Kroger to get some plastic bags for them to bag up the food. And I got there, and there was something else that they had. It was like 2 carts of coats, of winter coats. They're like, we have this stuff, and they said the same thing. We have all this stuff that we collect for the community, and we just don't ever have anybody know to come get it.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's amazing that when you get out in the community and start to do things, then you start to find what resources are out there and available. That's why we're such good resources to do it for one another.
Absolutely. And helping bridge the gap of how we sometimes work in silos in communities. Like you said, a lot of the stuff is there. We're just not aware of it.
Right. Okay, so we're going to go to break, and when we come right back, we're going to have a little bit more dynamic dialogue.
Only you can say Do you hear me, baby? I want you to hear every word I say, yeah, girl. That means I love you, baby. And that means that I want you, baby. And that means that I'm gonna get you, baby. Well, 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 well. Don't you know that I love you, girl? Your kiss can drive me crazy. Yes, you do, girl. Kiss, love, sweet love. Do anything that you wanna do. But don't you ever, 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 ever go nowhere. Please, I don't want you to go nowhere, baby. You see, I love you, girl.
That's why I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. That's why I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. That's why I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. That's why I love it, I love it, love it, I love it.
Look, my girl trippin' said I treat her like a groupie, but I never took a groupie out to eat. See, I've been ballin', I've been poppin', I've been bubblin', I've been buzzin' in my city. Women love me, think I'm pretty, and they confirm it whenever they see me in person. If I said it, I meant it, I said it on purpose. Don't sleep on that furnace, cause boy, we hot. And then my job to make you think and make music that you feel, then these songs should make you sing. I guess we never know what we need to know, where we need to go. Mind it right, feel like I'm Ichiro. I shed light, they need to grow. Fuck them all, fuck their friends, fuck they car, fuck your brand, fuck your blog. It save money, we an army full of generals. Here to push the envelope and change what they think. It's my job to make them think and make music that they feel, so these songs make them sing like where the end will go, will I ever know? Heaven only knows. Where the end will go, will I ever know? Heaven only knows.
That's why I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. That's why I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. That's why I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. I love it.
If I drop it, they gonna cop it. I might start a non-for-profit. My papa say, Chancellor, I am so proud of you. Like my beats, they made all of them. Keep my feet on the ottoman. I just might run for alderman. You got power too. Speak that rap, put a message in. It's that sugary medicine. Feel like the intro, but better than it's ever been. Jumping like checkers, clever like chesses, smoking like purpose, perfect like surface, deeper than surface. Anxious and nervous, the world isn't flat. It's sharp as a circus, and starving like sharks is just looking for surface. I'm not in the industry, not in the service, not in the retail. Not in my knowledge, neglecting the detail. I'm only beginning, behold magnificence. Brown skin black boy with his red headphones, calling omnipotent. You choke like cinnamon, you broke up in a man. Drop that send 197 at your fucking airport.
Where the end will go, will I ever know? Heaven only knows.
Hey, why are you about to have the hottest tape of 2015? It's stupid. This song is already so hot, I'm actually just glad that you let me rap on it.
Welcome back to Dynamics of Dialogue. And we are in the studio with Teresa Stewart. Clyde just had to step out for a moment, but he is still with us. So we were just having some interesting conversation about the similarities that we all experienced and the coping skills that we've had to develop in order to navigate through some of these challenges that we've had in life. So I want to really kind of get into, how do you feel that this affected your friends and your family, the people around you? What was hard about that?
The hardest is my son. I have one son, and had it not been for my addiction, I probably would have had 4 children. I had twin boys that passed away. At the time of the height of my addiction, I could not put it down long enough to do the things I needed to do to have a proper pregnancy. But I think they affected it tremendously, you know, especially now, not using and being in the process of recovery. It affects everybody. It affects everybody. You know, one conversation I want to say that I did have with my son, he'll be 26 next month. One of the things I wanted to convey to him at the time, and also to the listeners who's on the other side of this, was that I told him that I have to suffer through with some things that I missed out. There's a part of me that still craves that young child, that little boy, and he's not there no more. He's 26 years old. And so I can still, I could go through places of grief, and because I don't have the 10-year-old, the 11-year-old that I could go to middle school with, and I could still crave those things, that we're so past that. And I didn't tell him that to not be mindful of how he was feeling, but to let him know that as a result of my addiction, I hurt too. I still have those sufferings. I still have those things I could never get back like you. How can we get over this together? Right.
It's having that conversation, because at the end of the day, it's difficult being a person. See, I can still identify with all of this, because it's difficult being a person that has had to deal with something on that level, and you've had to go through a process to heal and recover. And then if other people are slighted or hurt by things that you've done, if they continue to hold that over you, then that stops you from healing. Right. And then they create a scenario where you can't keep them in close quarters, because, you know, if you're willing to acknowledge, hey, this is, you know, I understand this is what I did, but I need to have conversation about it. Right. And let's focus on the opportunity to heal rather than spending the time being in, because there's nothing that you can do about the past.
Absolutely. And I encourage anybody out there, try to find a way into that healing process. Right. Because, excuse me, one of the two things I have observed is, one, the person in recovery will grow. They will continue to grow. They will continue their process. Right. And if you're not welcome into that healing process, or bitterness, and I don't say that to be insensitive, I don't, because I completely get it, then you can stay stuck. You can stay stuck, and things are going past you. Right. Right. And we want to have those conversations. I want it, and I still know today that there's some things my son hasn't disclosed, but when the time is right, he will. Right. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of things that he has visualized that I wish he had not had to. There's times when he had to get himself ready for school, you know, and so still some conversations I know that we need to have. And my patience is being rooted in my recovery process, so that I'm able to sit there and hear what he needs to say. But it can be mutual. Healing can be mutual. It can be. It can be. You know, I had 2 fellow CPSs on some time ago, actually when I was on a different show, but I interviewed them for a segment called Hope Speaks, and that's exactly what happened with them when, you know, mom, you know, we have to understand, right, it affects the son by watching the mom go through addiction, and then the son doesn't know what to do, and he's acting out, and she gets well and into recovery, and then he has a choice to make. Do I stay angry at her, or do I follow this path too? And I'm grateful that they both, you know, fell into that state on that path of recovery and are doing well. So, you know, but there's a choice, and those are the part of the conversations we don't talk about. We focus on the person that dealt with the addiction,
and as the ultimate source. But then when we understand the story, there's a story that goes around them.
Right.
Now, one thing I do say, because in my experience, that the past is the past, but then we have to be present to ourselves to not bring that behavior forward.
Absolutely.
Right, so we can't expect people to be, it can't be in two places. If you want to forgive that past behavior, you can't bring it forward. Right. So those are some of the challenges that I personally have, but I know in your cases, you all are doing some amazing things, right? So when you stay in that space, what is it for you, Clyde? Now, Clyde, for the people on the video can see, but the people on the audio, just so you can see, Mr. Lloyd has entered the room, and I'm bringing him back into the conversation. Mr. Lloyd, how is it? What for you? How has this whole experience of dealing with addiction and recovery? How has it brought forward something for you? I know you said that you weren't doing it necessarily for yourself, but you did say that you wanted to help other people.
Right. What you were just talking about, I had to get past blaming my mother for my behavior.
Yes.
For years, I said, I'm like this because of you two. And I blame them for all my acting out. But even in, what they were doing, I still had a choice to make, and I chose to do what I did. And what you were saying, the way I see it is, I live with my past, I don't live in it. And to me, it's like driving a car. The windshield is a lot bigger than the rearview mirror. What God got for me is in front of me. It ain't behind me. Now, I peek in the past in my rearview mirror every now and then just to check and see what's back there. But I'm looking forward. Now, I have to make adjustments to keep it in the lane because sometimes I come out of my lane, but I pull it back into my lane, you know what I mean? So that's how I see it. I'm moving forward. So I got my eyes on what's in front of me. And, and helping people, it's nothing like, my eyes was open to a lot of the things that were going on to me, through people investing in me. People took time to invest in me and talk to me and listen to me and, cry with me and heal with me. So I just, I'm just doing the same. I just have a lot of compassion in my heart, and when people hurt, I hurt, and
Right.
I don't know necessarily if that's a good thing, but it's just part of who I am. And like she was saying earlier, I want people to bring 100% of themselves in the room. I don't want them to leave nothing at the door. I want them to be okay with who they are. I don't anticipate people being what I want them to be. I want them to be just who they are, and I meet them right where they're at. I'm sort of like, I sort of see God meeting people right where they're at, but not allowing them to stay there.
Right.
Right.
So let me ask you this. How do you feel like the experience that you had affected your family and your loved ones? I mean, I know you said that you want them to, people have to make a decision to not hold on to it. But in terms of, like Teresa talked a little bit about what that was like for her, can you talk a little bit about what that's like for you, interacting with the people that were affected during that time?
Well, yeah, me and my brothers, we often reflect on, some of the things we went through, but we also realize it's made us the people that we are, who we are now, it's, even my mom and my dad, we talk about some of the things, and I know that they feel really bad about, but that's where they were, they had some issues going on, and, they had to deal with that. And one thing about my mom, she, when we were kids, she's like, look, Mom has to go away. Mom is sick, but when she comes back, she's going to be better. And until today, she's been on her journey, so we talk about it. There's a lot of healing in talking about it because there's just too much silence in my culture, and we have to talk about, the things that have happened to get past them.
We have to talk about it. I was just talking with my life coach last week, and she says you cannot To paraphrase, but you cannot acknowledge the things you don't ever talk about. You can't get past it if you don't ever talk about it. And it just amazes me how there are so many things that goes on in our families that we're so stuck in that what goes on in this house stays in this house culture that we don't realize how we are propagating our own torturous demise. We're sending this message because we won't talk about it. If you know there's a person in the family that has had a particular issue, then you need to say something. You know, why would you hold that? You know what I mean? It's protecting pride at what expense?
And if I can add to that, and not that it's much to add to it, but even seeing it on when I think about my trauma, again, having the ability to say or to be that leader, that outspoken person, that too. You're right. So one of the definitions I learned with humility wasn't just being thinking more too highly of yourself, but not thinking too low of yourself either.
Absolutely.
So a lot of times that can have that adverse effect because my self-worth was so shot, right? My self-worth was just so shot that the things that I knew, I had that voice, but the things that I knew that I wanted to say, even that platform wasn't provided. I didn't know how to, in other words, mom probably didn't know how to nurture, going back to coping skills, that leader or that, and I don't say that out of cockiness because again, if it was my choice, I'd rather be behind the scenes.
I think that we're kind of groomed to not nurture that
Right.
because out of fear and protection, wanting safety and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, right, we're groomed not to, no, let's just stay here, no, just sit here, or, you know, you're a woman, and or, you know, you're a child, you're some of these things, so just not knowing how to even cultivate that can be really, really traumatic because you can have all these big emotions and these big things going on, and you don't know. I didn't know how to channel it for a lot of time. So I didn't know what to do with it. So it became overwhelming. So I did though.
And you know, a lot of times, you know, in my addiction, you know, my family members, the ones that weren't around, I made them sick by some of the things that I was doing. So they saw things in abstract ways behind my behaviors. So now, when I come around, other people come around, you know, they throw, you know, the way they want to hold my past against me, you know. Now you high and mighty. Used to be like this. Oh, now you making decisions. I liked you better when you was using, you know. Because I'm able to make decisions now, and I'm able to think right now.
Right.
You know, I'm able to say, no, I don't want to spend my money over there. I'd like to spend it over here. I like you better the other way, where you didn't have any control and you was just free-giving and spontaneous, you know what I mean? So I realized, though, I created a lot of that stuff. So, you know, I believe in families sitting down and kind of doing some workshops and kind of working through
Kitchen
some things.
table.
That's so important.
Kitchen table. And I realized that connection. I didn't know it
yes.
was therapeutic then. But when you took away that kitchen table, it was like taking away a chunk
You
of
took
me.
away everything. It took away the one, and it's something about that space. And even though I can think about it, it's when I go back to growing up, even though there were lots of, you know, chaos, lots of crazy things going on, the stability that I remember was the meals, the dinners, the holidays at my grandmother's house. And every, like, Christmas, we got together. It was traditional West Indian breakfast, you know, kalaloo, aki, all of that, you know, everything. Oh, my gosh, my Aunt Beryl come and cook, like, you know, but those, even in the chaos,
right?
What I can remember still fondly was breaking bread with family, that time together at the table, because there was something that was magical that happened. There was a connection that gets created in that. And for me, I was connected with my culture, connected with the people around me in a way that I might not be all year long,
Right.
you know. And then, interestingly enough, when my grandmother passed away, every year, you know, it's never a conversation as to where Thanksgiving dinner is going to be.
Wow.
While grandma's living, everybody go where grandma's at. Well, that's my grandmother. That would be my dad's mother. After she passed away,
Right.
it all changed, right? It is that something about that glue and being connected, and that having those family conversations. So listen, we are going to go to break, and when we come back, we'll be back with more dynamic dialogue. Great conversation. And we're getting ready to go to break in just a minute, and it's going to come up just right now.
Yeah, shouts out to Lady Lady. Now I know, there she go, pay up.
I love you, I love you, I love you. Until I love you, I love you, I love you.
Until I find a way.
Words I know that you.
Until I find a way. Listen, I know you see it, girl. This ain't sitting real good in my soul. Everywhere this little girl goes, she pick up another obstacle. She was my heart. I don't know the tribe or the fall. But by default, she don't think of me. I thought she was an Indian. Now she's slanging things like a simian. All my life I wanted me an Indian. But now she's far away. But I had to know. Yeah. Listen, I know you see it, girl. This ain't sitting real good in my soul. Everywhere this little girl goes, she pick up another obstacle. She was my heart. I don't know the tribe or the fall. Yeah. But by default, she don't think of me. I thought she was an Indian. But now she's slanging things like a simian. All my life I wanted me an Indian. Ooh, girl, let me hear. In the street with a wedding ring, and she hit the box, city bake. Are you down to cheat? He looked in the eye, chivalry. Is it really there? He pulled out a tip, pay up. Jumping right on him, thinking when's it good to intervene, and I lost her. Lost her to the world and the girls and the posters. Entertain, I doubt it'll pay in the cost her. I ain't mad at me, but it hurts, and I thought she was an Indian. Yeah, but now she only worried about the Benjamins. Yeah. She been lurking in my dreams. Yeah. I said I swear to die on me, but I had to know. I said I swear to die on me. Yeah. I swear this is me playing saxophone, but my saxophone was left at home, so I just got this. I said I swear to die on me.
I need you, I need you, I need you. I need to make you see what you mean to me. Until I feel I'm hoping you will know what I mean.
What's up, y'all? This is Frida Love. I want you to join me on Sundays from 1 to 3 p.m. with Dynamics of Dialogue, where the art of conversation creates something special on IBNX Radio Network.
I remember them days when I used to hang in the club. So addicted to fame, they say it's the same as a drug. Not a lame or a scrub, no, that ain't what it was. No, this girl is somebody else's, I think I'm in love. She knows she bad, but what's new? Maybe the baddest. I want you, girl, I gotta have it. What they do, girl, you cool, girl, play by the rules, girl. Cause we catching feelings for sure. You know the game and you know how it go. We keeping shit on the low. Girl, I'm a G, I'ma stick to the code. So many times I've been down this road. Nobody's heard if nobody knows. Go ahead and call your nigga. Tell him you ain't coming home. I got you creeping, yeah. You got a man at home. You know he cheating, but you won't leave him. What's the reason? Yeah, you know your man is scrub. That ain't no real love. You rather get even, you don't need him, no. He got you chasing waterfalls. That red light special got me gone. Girl, tell me why you holding on. You don't know, you don't know. Ay, I know I got a lot of hoes, but I ain't never showed a side before. Ay, even my mama knows. So senorita, mama knows. If I never told you that I want you to myself, girl, 'cause I'm down to show you that I want you to be mine. I got you creeping, yeah. You got a man at home, you know he cheating, but you won't leave him. What's the reason? Yeah, you know your man is scrub. That ain't no real love. You rather get even, you don't need him, no. He got you chasing waterfalls. That red light special got me gone. Girl, tell me why you holding on. You don't know, you don't, so you creeping. Yeah, you creeping on the down low. Nobody's supposed to know. Yeah, so you creeping. Yeah, you creeping on the down low. Nobody's supposed to know. Yeah.
You're listening to IBNX. IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music.
Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z.
Hey, I'm Mariah Carey.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P., man. It is. It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce.
This is Nicki Minaj, and I'm in the mix with
IBNX Radio.
You know what? And that is so true. We are just back from break. Oh, no, this was excellent. This is excellent because we were just having a very riveting discussion during break. It's really good to get a chance to do this before we go to connect, because the one thing that we share in common is that we're all New Yorkers. And I wasn't born in New York. I grew up there. I grew up in the Bronx, East Bronx, but you know, but there's an experience that we were talking about, a way of being that you develop growing up in an environment like that. And even though we grow ourselves and we enhance and we develop, that doesn't go away. So that's a really fancy way of saying, don't get it twisted. You can still catch these hands. You know?
Yeah.
That's what that is, right?
For real.
Right. Size don't mean nothing.
No.
Size don't mean nothing. Right, you know. So I mean, but and that's interesting though, because I think when we talk about trauma, one of the things we don't talk about is the way the environment affects us. And I know for me, part of my experience is thinking about what it was like just in the living environment, you know, going in and out of the buildings. Oh gosh, those horrible elevators with, you know, that are tiny. I think that's why I'm claustrophobic today. That sometimes you have to leave out the building and the lights are out in the stairwell, and you know it's about 3-4 crack addicts in that stairwell that is not in a good place, and you're going down that stairwell in the dark, you know, and you don't know what's you know, those type of things. So environmentally, and you're a kid, I mean, I'm thinking you got to leave out the house with the food stamps and the elevator broken. You got to get down them stairs and get to the store. And what you going to do? Go back to the house and say, you know what I'm saying? So there's lots of things that come up with it, just the way the neighborhood is, the way that we have to be aggressive, right? When you go out in the street as kids. I mean, how old were you catching the train by yourselves? Or how old were you how old were y'all?
I was like 12. When I was 12, getting on the train, buses, moving around. They had people in my neighborhood that had never even been to Manhattan. And I was like, what? You know, I just moving all around, you know, just having to grow up because, you know, my mom and dad had checked out, you know, at that time.
Yes.
So I had to just move about and do all my exploring on my own, make decisions as a 13-year-old and 12-year-old.
Growing up really
that
quickly.
I should have had to make.
Right. As children, we're having these experiences that, you know, we're dealing with this level of adversity, these decisions that we have to make where you're in a position from difficult, more difficult, you know, and then all of these are underlying factors that affect our coping skills and affect our how we see things and our opportunities to even grow, right? Because part of recovery is not just knowing that it can actually happen, but then actually having access, right? And knowing that it's available to you, having the opportunity to connect to those things that will put you in the right place.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, it is, for me, it's, as usual, a pleasure to be around you all and to hear your stories and have the opportunity to connect in a way like this and get from you some of the things that you managed to do in this community that is just so powerful.
Thank
so
you.
helpful.
This is coping skills. This is coping skills live, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coping skills 101.
Yeah.
Coping skills
Having those
101.
conversations. But we thank you for, again, providing a platform to have conversations like this and to bring to the platform conversations like this, even with you being on the other side of it. Respectfully, I appreciate that because I really do want to hear the stories from the other side. That really is therapeutic for me as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just my peers, but it's also the allies and the family members too.
Right.
So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that y'all came. You know, like I said, it's just taking this time for me. I think it's a matter of importance. You know, the space. It's the reason why I appreciate having the ability to do internet radio, where I can come and have a meaningful conversation.
Right.
And
I just want to thank y'all for allowing me to be here with two powerful women. You know,
thank you.
I realized I was raised by women, so I realized just how powerful and beautiful women are. You know, if God created anything more beautiful than a woman, He kept it to Himself. You know? So I appreciate y'all, and you know, y'all stick and stay, and I appreciate that. And thank you for allowing us to be here. You know, to just share some of our hopes and dreams and struggles, you know, and just looking forward to, you know, what's in front of us, you know, and who else can we bless and help and support, you know, walk beside.
Yeah. It's extremely important, you know. I think that through labeling each other in our society, we have a way of using that to diminish people's value. By, you know, oh, she's fat, she has less to offer. Or she's got a mental illness, she's got less to offer. Or she had a drug problem. Or she always watch your purse. You know, it's always something that we use to label each other. But at the end of the day, we all suffer with something. We all struggle with something. Our skin color, our wealth, you know, none of that protects us from the difficulties that life has to offer.
And even when that baton is passed off, I picked it up and I deprived myself. You know, because again, that conditioning. And so being able to learn to put that down and saying, you know, you do have worth. Like I said, just allow myself to be who I was created to be, who God created me to be. And then when that happened, I was liberated.
I'm telling you, it's a liberating thing. That's why I'm going to tell you honestly. I made sure when I, you know, signed up to do this show at the station, I made sure that I had a time slot that allowed me to cuss, because I mean, just being on the radio and just talking about important stuff, and I can't cuss. I mean, you know, I just needed to be me. I gotta be.
Awesome.
I mean, I could be Taisha, I could be Thais, but one of them people gonna cuss at one point in time. So, you know, and it's just about being, you know, just accepting that space and whoever you are. So Adria just said to me the other day, show up as yourself so that when you really come into your fullness, people won't be surprised by who you are.
Yeah, I'd rather you be yourself, not who I want you to be, but be who you are. You know, that's what I support.
Right, and it's appreciated being in a group of people that are supportive of that, especially like you said, you know, in a society where we're so picked about each other about all these little things, but at the end of the day, we all have something.
Right.
We do, so I appreciate it. Teresa, you want to give out some information about I Hope before you get out of here today?
I do. So our website is www.ihopeinc.org. You can visit our website. On there, we're updating our events page, and so anything that's going on in the Middle Georgia area, you can go on our events page. You have an about page if you want to find out more information. If you want to get involved or just want to hear more about what a recovery community organization is and what it does, you can ihoperco.org is our at Gmail. I'm sorry, ihoperco@gmail.com is our email. So yeah.
Okay, all righty.
Okay, and one small change, and you can. I believe that's .com. If not, you can put in Dr. Deidre Hawkins or Adria Kitchens or Tony Lansing. You can also put in both in partners, and you can put Dr. Deidre Hawkins in there, and or you can go in the Rise Theater and Alexia Jones, and you'll get a lot of interesting information, a lot of free things going on. We do Chicago dinners, we do a lot of different things, so come on out and support.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to the next coming events. As usual, I thank you all for coming in. This was another amazing episode of Dynamics of Dialogue.
Yes.
I'm telling you, you all just made this show extra successful today.
Thank you. Thank you.
In more ways than one.
Thank you
so much.
You're very welcome.
Listen, tune in every Sunday from 1 to 3 on Dynamics of Dialogue. Check us out on IBNX Network, official DFD, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Hey, what's up? It's your girl M Love, and you are tuned in to Dynamics of Dialogue on the IBNXradio.com network. Peace.
You're listening to IBNX, IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music. Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z.
Hey, I'm Mariah Carey.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P., man. It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce. This is Nicki Minaj, and I'm in the mix with
IBNX Radio.